Welcome to another episode of some random white guy talking about film photography on YouTube. No sponsor today. Give you guys a break from all the advertising I do on this channel. Today I thought it'd be pretty fun to look at a unique film stock. Normally I shoot with Kentmere 400 because it's cheap and convenient, and I can buy it in 100-foot bulk rolls like I do with toilet paper at Costco. I've shot everything from HP5 to Tri-X to T-Max. I've even got a roll of Agfa APX 400 that's just sitting there waiting patiently for me to play with it, just like Porter does while I'm shooting and editing these videos. But I've had my eye on a particular film stock from Ilford called XP2 Super. According to Ilford's website, XP2 is a sharp, fast, black and white film with fine grain and a wide tonal range, which makes it an excellent all-rounder to have in your camera. Now, if you're as cynical as I am, that just sounds like standard marketing hype that can be applied to just about any black and white film out there. But there is something that gives this film stock a pretty unique leg up on other black and white films. This is a film that you can actually process with C41 color chemicals. That's right, you can develop this film in the same tank as Portra 160, Fuji Pro 400FH, whatever it's called, or even Cinestill 800T. And that's just totally bonkers to me. Like, it flies in the face of everything I learned when I was first starting out developing my own film. Even crazier is that this is a black and white film because it's processed in C41 chemicals. You can actually take it to Walgreens or wherever still has like a 1 hour photo in store. I mean, not that I would recommend it, just because, I don't know, I just don't recommend it, but you can if you really want to. So if you're unfamiliar with the analog world of film photography, ISO is actually fixed on film. It has to do with the physical properties of the film itself, and they're set. You know, you can't just change it. Changing the ISO setting on your camera doesn't affect how sensitive your film is, unlike it would with a digital sensor. But apparently, some wizard at Ilford said, nah fam. The original Ilford XP was introduced at Photokina in 1980, and the photography world collectively lost their minds. The XP line went through a few revisions before Ilford finally landed on the XP2 Super film stock in 1998. Since you can mix and match your ISO settings within the same roll, and because you can get it developed at your local drugstore or just throw it in a tank with whatever color film you have, it sounds like it should be the most versatile film out there. So let's go see how it shoots. To test this film out, I loaded up my Nikon F2 and headed to my new favorite parking deck. I mean, everybody has a favorite parking deck, right? I went there in the middle of the afternoon on a pretty cloudless day just to make sure I get some nice harsh, or maybe not harsh, but strong shadows, just to really test out the, I guess they call it tonal range, dynamic range of this film stock. I just really like shooting at parking decks for some reason. They've always got like this kind of brutalistic feel with all the concrete and everything, and they make some interesting shadows and shapes and geometry and all that, and it can provide an interesting perspective to look down onto the streets from. Grammar. One of the things that I was most curious about with this film is whether or not changing the ISO setting on your camera actually adjusts the light sensitivity of the film. In the marketing hype and everything, it's not incredibly clear whether or not that's the case. They just say you can shoot different ISOs on the same film. So to test this out, I took 5 pictures of the same thing, one at 50 ISO, 100 ISO, 400, 800, and 1600. I didn't change any of the other settings, and of course my light meter had no idea what was going on. So I got a standard reading at 400 ISO just to get my exposure right. And then I changed the ISO settings and didn't change anything else about my settings. Settings, just to see what would happen. And it turns out, no, changing the ISO setting does not change your film's sensitivity to light. As I expected, but come on, man, it sounded so good. It's too good to be true, I guess. But I did shoot another roll of XP2 and kind of did the same thing, but I adjusted my aperture and my shutter speed to match up with what my light meter was telling me whenever I set it to a different ISO. And the results are obviously different because without changing any of the other exposure settings, if you're just changing your ISO, that's not going to do anything to what the camera takes in. It just doesn't. So you're going to get pretty much the same exposure even if you change your ISO settings. But what this allows you to do is basically push and pull within one roll of film, which is just incredible to me. A lot of the reviews that I've seen written up or filmed about this film stock is that everybody seems to say that it's really contrasty, and I don't know if I'm just doing it wrong, which is quite possible, but it seems more or less like, not flat, it's definitely got plenty of character, but it seems more neutral than something like Tri-X, which is like the most contrasty film straight out of the box that I've shot with, at least. This seems more in line with Ilford's other products, which tend to be a little bit flatter. Like, they'll have some natural contrast, but they are a little bit flatter than, you know, like I said, something like Tri-X. But with this less contrasty image that the XP2 Super produces, you have a lot more room for play in the post-processing part of it. So you can make it look really contrasty because you have a lot of information to kind of play with, but naturally, I just don't see it. I don't know, maybe I'm seeing things wrong. What do I know, man? I could be completely wrong, and you see these pictures and they're like, oh my God, yeah, they're so contrasty. I guess you could just say that we have contrasting opinions. I think that about does it for this episode. Overall, I would say that this is a really fun film to experiment with. I don't necessarily think that I would shoot this all the time just because I don't shoot color all the time. And like, you can develop this in black and white chemicals, but it's recommended that you develop it in C41. And I just don't shoot that much color. Maybe this will get me to shoot more color because then I'll have more excuses to use the color chemicals, but it's just like, I don't know, black and white is just easier for me to shoot with. I would absolutely recommend giving this film stock a try just to, I don't know, it's just the chemistry and the science behind photography has always fascinated me, and this just like flies in the face of what I thought film stocks were capable of being. I don't know, I'm kind of just speaking off the top of my head here. Yeah, it's not your conventional black and white film, and that's probably the best thing about it, is that it is super XP2 Super. They knew what they were doing when they named this film. It's super versatile, and just the fact that you can have so many different looks on the same roll of film is awesome. If this came in like bulk 100-foot rolls, I would probably shoot 100 feet of it just to really get familiar with this film, because unfortunately it is a little bit on the expensive side as far as black and white films go. I think that about does it for this video. Yeah, I think so. If you like this video, there's a like button. If you have something to say, there's a section for comments. If you want to see more of this kind of content, there's a little button that says subscribe. And if you think this is just the best thing you've ever heard and you want to share the good news, then hit that share button. Otherwise, you'll see me next time.